Hey guys, what is going on? And welcome back to my Halloween Horror Reviews 2021. I hope you are enjoying the reviews so far. I am having a great time talking horror films with you all this month. But moving on with today's review, as you just saw the expression on my face right there. For today's review, I'm going to be talking about 2000's Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, directed by Joe Berlinger. Oh man. In Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, this film doesn't really take place after the events of the original film. Rather, it takes place after the release of the original Blair Witch Project, and essentially what Book of Shadows does is that rather than being a traditional sequel where it would probably do a narrative after the events of the original film, what Book of Shadows does is that it showcases the impact of what the original Blair Witch Project did on people's lives. Specifically, with this group of 5 people, particular one person who loved the original film so much that he wants to capitalize on that original film and orchestrate this thing called the Blair Witch Hunt, where he takes 4 other people and he essentially does this tourist attraction showcasing the location of where the original film was shot at. However, after one particular night of partying very hard, they notice that after the next morning that things have gone down and they have no idea what the hell just happened. Alrighty guys, so let's get into Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2.
Damien!
I know a lot of you are probably saying, wait a second, there's actually a pro section for this movie? You've got to be kidding me. I know you all are probably expecting for me to just straight up trash this movie, because do not get me wrong, Book of Shadows, Blair Witch Project 2 is an awful movie. I mean, this movie is terrible. There is, surprisingly enough, one thing about this movie that I think is well done. This movie is directed by Joe Berlinger, who, before he directed this movie, he made some documentaries. He also directed a great Metallica documentary titled Some Kind of Monster, which is one I highly recommend, and he also did a couple of Ted Bundy documentaries, which I also highly recommend. I like how this movie does show the impact of what the original film had on people's lives, like how it scared the crap out of some people, me in particular, how residents went to actually go to Burkittsville, Maryland to see where they actually filmed the movie. That is the one thing about this movie I think, you know what? That's not a bad thing, and I can applaud them for that. Otherwise, yeah. Let's continue on.
Happy purge, you old fuck!
I want to tell you all about my first encounter with this movie. Not actually seeing the movie, because I didn't see Book of Shadows until what? I want to say almost 5, maybe 6 years after this movie came out. My first time seeing anything about this movie, I was at a Blockbuster, because now really quick, even more so, fun fact, I used to live in Georgia before I moved in Florida, and if I remember correctly, I went into a Blockbuster and I'd always had a love for horror films ever since I was a little kid, and I was looking through just a bunch of VHS tapes and I saw the cover for Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2. Not even knowing about the original film, and I thought the cover looked so awesome, and I just thought, I want to see that movie. But of course, as a kid, my parents wouldn't have allowed me to see it. If I remember correctly, after seeing the VHS tape for the first time, I did not see anything about this movie until, I want to say, maybe, let's give it 5 years after I saw the VHS tape? I want to say maybe 5 or 6 years. The original film, still to this day, scares the crap out of me. I mean, I remember when I rewatched the original film in preparation for Blair Witch, which I find to be very underrated, by the way. After I rewatched the original film with one of my best friends, I got home that night and the sound of a rock made me haul ass to my front door. Like, that's how much it scares me. Then we get on to Book of Shadows. Oh, where do I even start with this movie? I completely get that this movie is one of those cases of studio interference. The director of the film, Joe Berlinger, did not want the film to be this way. In fact, his original vision for the film was supposed to be a meditation or a exploration of mass hysteria where we take in the media very easily. I love that idea, and the first 4 minutes of that movie does show that idea. But after that first 4 minutes, this movie goes from what seems to be a very promising film, and it goes essentially like, the Blair Witch Project was a massive, and I mean, this movie was a massive success. So as you all can imagine, when a certain studio saw the box office numbers, they wanted to greenlight a sequel immediately. That was Artesian. They weren't inspired by what the film had done for horror films or how that film was scary. No. Of course, as you can imagine, when a studio sees that a film makes that much money and recuperating their budget, they want to greenlight a sequel immediately, Haxon Films, who was part of the studios of that film, wanted to wait until the hype died down for Blair Witch Project, which I applaud them for. But really, Blair Witch Project doesn't really need a sequel. It doesn't. They hired Joe Berlinger, who wanted to make a much different film than what Artesian made. Artesian saw what Joe Berlinger had done, basically removed him from the editing room, reshot many sequences, re-edited many sequences, and what we have here is a fucking disaster of a movie. I mean, just... what the fuck? What can I say about the performances in this movie other than that they're either melodramatic, overcooking everything, or they're just bad. There is not a single thing about the performances that is even remotely even subpar or just average. In particular, the main guy, I believe his name is Jeff, who orchestrates this entire thing, his performance in this movie is laughable, and the dialogue he has. There is a line of dialogue. You know what? I'm just gonna play the clip for you guys. Roll it.
This is all my research.
Our work. Every word.
Where the fuck are my cameras?
They teach it at junior colleges. I bet that even you could get into.
Oh yeah, and how did you get into yours? You have to brush your teeth?
Yeah, that was written and performed. I completely get that a studio wants to capitalize on that first film's success. But when they do it to the point of making a stain to the original film, I mean, they clearly did not know what they were doing. And they clearly did not know what made the original film so great. The girl who plays the Wiccan, I can't remember her name, I'll put her name right here. But good lord. There's a sequence in this movie where she is doing a ritual, and the way how they're acting apart this all out is just, it's laughably bad. This is one of those movies where it's not so bad it's good. It is so bad that it is straight up laughable in how bad it is. The fact that the studio saw this and they released it, I mean, sure, I think it was a box office success. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. If you thought those guys were bad, the sheriff in this movie is by far the most laughable performance in this movie. I mean, just look at a couple of these scenes.
What do you want from me?
I got 5 corpses here.
Look, I had nothing to do with that.
Now, you might not have been in charge here, but I know you had something to do with this. So you and your little friends had best just sit tight. It's Cravens, you little shit.
Sheriff, I'm a little preoccupied right now.
I have something to talk to you about. Get your butt down here.
Well, that's gonna be impossible because my van is trashed, and you know Mommy doesn't let me out after dark.
I'm right at your front doorstep, you little twerp. Get out here.
The fucking delivery is work. One thing in particular that I need to talk about is the structure and the editing of this film. This is Book of Shadows Blair Witch 2 is one of the worst edited horror films, or should I even call this a horror film, which I'll get into later, that I have ever seen. All this movie is just a hodgepodge and a clusterfuck. It legitimately feels like the editor just went like, put that over here. I guess we could put the sequence right here. What the random sequences that really make no fucking sense in this movie. But there are a couple of sequences in this movie that are just so poorly edited and so poorly orchestrated that I quite literally was watching my TV with this look. This movie doesn't even feel like a psychological horror film. It feels like more of a thriller with random parts they showcase blood and gore. That's what this movie is. I haven't even gotten to the worst part of this whole thing. So, in terms of the horror, not only does this movie try, and I mean they do try, to up the violence and gore, but by far the most laughable thing about the horror of this movie is that here and there, Out of nowhere, by the way, this shows up. There are a couple of parts in this movie where they just put in the ghost of a little girl. Out of nowhere, quite literally doing this. Who thought that was scary? They tried everything they could possibly do to bring this movie out of the dumps. Another thing I want to talk about, the film's ending. It makes no sense. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. The best way I can convey my thoughts about the ending of this movie is just playing this clip. Like, this is legitimately the best way I can convey my thoughts, so roll this.
What the fuck was that?
What the fuck was that? Before I move on to my overall, one more thing that I want to talk about, and this is making me laugh already. The title of this movie. Now look at the title of this movie again. It is titled Book of Shadows Blair Witch 2. Book of Shadows. There is, in this movie, at no point throughout this movie is there a Book of Shadows. It is neither shown, nor mentioned, or anything. This movie literally is just titled for shits and giggles, Book of Shadows Blair Witch 2. So overall, Book of Shadows Blair Witch 2 is the very definition of a cash grab. Despite the first 4 minutes of this movie showing quite a bit of promise, that promise tanks and explodes like an atom bomb. Book of Shadows Blair Witch 2 is nothing more than a disastrous clusterfuck of a so-called horror film. It is by far one of the worst horror films I have ever seen. All in all, I'm gonna give Book of Shadows Blair Witch 2 a straight up 0 out of 5. This movie is a stain on the Blair Witch Project legacy. Thankfully, we have the very underrated Blair Witch, which I don't get the hate for, but if you guys love the original Blair Witch Project, and if you haven't seen this movie, do yourself a favor, stay away from this movie. Please. So comment down below and let me know what you guys think of Book of Shadows. Did you like the film? If so, I'm glad you did. Or did you hate it? Let me know below. If you guys want to follow me on social media, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch. I'm also on Snapchat. So if y'all want to follow me on all those social media platforms, all the links and the usernames are in the description below. I hope you all enjoyed my review of Book of Shadows Blair Witch 2. If so, please hit that like button, also subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification bell for whenever the latest video of mine goes live. If you guys want to see any of my previous 2 reviews, please click on it right there or right there. And of course, until my next review of my Halloween Horror Reviews 2021, I will see you all next time.